Your love is like radiant diamonds bursting inside us.
Ladies, good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome to Weekly One with Christin Crosby, where it is my passion to equip and empower you to lead and love better right where you are so that you can be a catalyst for Christ. Ladies, last week we started a Weekly One series that I am really excited about, equipping you guys for how to have difficult, critical conversations. Conversations that we often need to have, but we avoid because we've never been taught how to have them. I wanted to let you know, if you want to dive deeper, a lot of this material is coming from a book called Crucial Conversations. I had the opportunity to sit through a training on this book, and it was really awesome, full of tons of good stuff. But the thing that was so interesting to me, as I reflected on this training, it became pretty clear that the majority of this was biblically based. So a lot of what I'm teaching you guys comes from this book, but I've ran it through my biblical filter, so it's coming out a little bit different in the tools that I'm going to give you. Last week, we talked about defining what a critical conversation was. We identified two types of people in these situations, people who get silent or people who get violent, and I challenged you guys to identify what type of person you were and then identify your physical triggers. So if you're someone who gets angry, what does that look like for you? We're going to continue on with this conversation focusing on you. Because at the end of the day, you guys, all we can really control is ourselves. We can control our attitude, our words, our emotions, and our intent, but it takes a lot of awareness and tons of practice. So last week, when I challenged you to identify your triggers, that is so key, because that's going to be what leads to the next 3 steps that I'm giving you. You know what's interesting? When we talk about this concept of 2 types of people, going to silence or violence, it comes from this whole concept of fight or flight. When our emotions get high, fear steps in and our body goes into fight or flight mode. And when this happens, blood goes everywhere in your body but your brain. That means, think about it, you guys, that we're not getting oxygen to our brain, so we are not thinking clearly when our emotions run high. We become really bad at self-monitoring in these situations. So that's why first step we talked about last week was identifying your triggers. Once you know what your triggers are, I'm going to give you today 3 things to do. They all start with the letter P, so hopefully it will be easy for you to remember. Step number 1 is for you to pause. You know your triggers. If you start to see them happen, pause and ask yourself, am I in a critical conversation? Step number 2, follow that pause with a quick prayer. For me, when I get in these situations, I like to take that moment and I like to pray Colossians 3:12. God, please just clothe me with compassion, with kindness, humility, and patience and gentleness in this conversation. Find what verse works for you and spend a few quick seconds praying that and asking God to guide you through this conversation, to get your heart in the right place. The third P is to ponder. And guys, I chose that word very intentionally. I know the word ponder, you kind of think it's slow, you're spending some time, and I'm in the middle of a conversation. That's exactly what I want you to do. I want you to ponder. I want you to slow down, because in that process, we're bringing blood back to our brain, we're bringing oxygen back to our brain, and we're going to start to think clearer to empower ourselves to have this conversation better. In this moment, when you're pondering, there's 2 questions I want you to ask yourself. I want you to start by asking yourself, what's my purpose? What's my intent, my motivation here? For me, for them, for my family, for my organization, whatever you're dealing with. And the second thing I want you to ask is, what is my behavior saying? You guys, our purpose drives our motivation, and our motivations drive our behavior. Think about that. Our purpose drives our motivations or our intent. Our intents drive our behavior. So you know what's interesting? In a critical conversation, the first thing to go is not often our behavior. The first thing that deteriorates is our intent. Our purpose, our intent, our motivation goes down the toilet when we often get in these emotional situations. So in this third step, when you're pondering, focus first on what is my purpose? What is my intent, my motivation? And then the second question is, what is my behavior saying? This week, I want you guys to spend a few minutes focusing on motivations. So I want you to spend some time thinking about some unhealthy motivations that you may have and some healthy motivations that you may have. Write them down so that when you get into one of these conversations and you're on step number 3 and you're pondering, you can have ready in your mind those healthy things, the healthy motivations that you should be focusing on. Spend a few minutes on that this week. Ladies, I hope that this is helping you and blessing you. Remember these 3 things: pause, pray, and ponder. Get blood back to the brain, get oxygen back to the brain so you can think clearly as you move forward in this conversation. Next week, I'll see you right back here and we'll continue on with what the rest of this conversation and the tools you need will look like. Thanks, ladies, and have an awesome week. Bye.
God of mercy.